Well, my name's Andrew O'Shaughnessy. I'm the Saunders Director of the Robert H. Smith International Centre for Jefferson Studies at Monticello and Professor of History at the University of Virginia. Well, this book is about the British side of the American Revolution. So I often say it's like a man-bite-dog story. The idea of a book about the British side of the American Revolution being a finalist for the George Washington Prize awarded at Mount Vernon. However, I think it'll become clear to anyone who reads this book that there's no better way to appreciate the Patriot achievement than through the eyes of the British. I wrote it as a series of 10 interlinked biographical cameos of the key decision makers on the British side, both the politicians and the military leaders. They're introduced rather like a play. Each character appears at the key moment in which they're involved in the action. Well, the main purpose of the book is to explain why the British lost America. It's a popular belief, and this is especially true in Britain, that it was lost by incompetent leadership. And this is an idea that's portrayed in films and movies, which is important because most people get their sense of history from films. Many more people see a film than read a book about the American Revolution. But it's also perpetuated in popular histories. For example, Barbara Tuchman's book, The March of Folly, a third of it is devoted to what she regards as the follies of British leadership. I see it too in textbooks written for colleges and even in some academic monographs. And I really wanted to shift attention from what I regard as a distraction to what I see as the real essence of this war. It's essentially a war of hearts and minds. That term was actually used by the British Commander-in-Chief, Sir Henry Clinton, who said we need to win the hearts and subdue the minds of America. This was a civil war as well as a revolution. The population was divided, but the British thought that they would have the support of the majority of the population. That never happened. Even before a shot was fired, the British had lost control of the civil government of America. The Patriots had gained control of the militias, they'd gained control of the courts and also of the assemblies. And when the British captured territory, and at some point of the war they took every city in America, their control essentially imploded because of insurgencies led by people who today are folk heroes like Thomas Sumter. I think by looking at this war from the British perspective, you get a particular appreciation of George Washington. It's worth considering who the alternatives were to Washington. There are people like Horatio Gates, who was defeated by the Earl of Cornwallis at the Battle of Camden. Charles Lee, who was court-martialed after his actions at the Battle of Monmouth, or even John Hancock, who gave very undistinguished service when fighting off Newport in Rhode Island. The British admired Washington. He was the only person in the war that was not criticized by the British press. They criticized their own government, their own commanders, but they all had an admiration for Washington. When he died, the flags on British battleships went at half-mast, and the British Navy fired a full gun salute. Well, I'm thrilled to be a finalist in the George Washington Book Prize. It's become the leading prize in early American history. The list of previous winners is like a roster of the top historians of colonial, revolutionary, and early Republican America, people like Pauline Maier and Maya Jasanoff. It's a privilege to be in the company of the other finalists, Jeff Paisley and Alan Taylor. Alan Taylor, in fact, is a colleague of mine at the University of Virginia, and he is a twice winner of the Pulitzer Prize. There are only two people alive to have received that distinction.